Mozilla Science Project Hub. So at the Mozilla Science Lab, we're transforming science on the web, and part of that is really working with the open source community and bringing open science in there, and yeah, working on projects, which all of you guys are doing. So I'm really excited for today's call. So we have a special guest speaker, Andrew. Andrew, can you give us a wave? Yay. And have many projects on. So we're going to go through the Etherpad, and I'm also your MC today because yeah, here's the Etherpad. Because I am slow at getting things done this week. But yes, here's a link to join the call. Say hi in the chat on the right-hand side, and add your name to the roll call here. And oh, good, we have some friends of Mozilla Science, more than just me. Yay. So first, we have Amit, who's a new volunteer on Paper Badger. So yay, thanks Amit for coming and volunteering. I know you've been volunteering on a few different projects, so it's really great to see you on this one too. And we have two cool new volunteers on WorldBrain. Actually, Oliver, do you want to say a little bit about what they're doing? You're muted. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm in.
Good.
So I have two new contributors. Actually, we're now 7.
Oh.
And yeah, Toby is doing the Elasticsearch integration, and Vasile helps us with a crawler that indexes websites.
Awesome.
With Django, like Python and Django, and Scrapey.
That's awesome. Yeah, huge thanks to both Toby and Vasily for joining in on WorldBrain. Yay, we appreciate your contribution. So now on to our next section, best practices in open source. So over to Andrew. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yeah, what you're doing?
Hey, so I'm Andrew, based in the UK. Today I'm in New York at a workshop, so it might be a little bit noisy, but I've been trying to kind of index every bit of open source software and make it into kind of a shared data format that standardizes all the different packages from different package managers into a project I've called libraries.io. And all kinds of interesting things have kind of come out of that, especially as I've been looking into indexing the dependencies of all of these packages and building out a network of, for each different package manager, kind of all the projects that depend on other projects, as well as all of the GitHub projects that depend on like every dependency in every GitHub project. So ending up with a gigantic network of linked open source projects. And that kind of starts to shake out some interesting kind of behaviors or practices that you see across different open source projects. And right now it's kind of more just collecting information, but I hope that it can start to then encourage some good practices for kind of like, you're going to get, here are the best ways of doing things, and there's kind of a scoring system that I've built to give you a sense of like, you're going to get more points if you match these good practices, and those points then translate into, you show up on the search results slightly better, and for the users that ends up going, well, if I've got 5 different Redis libraries that I want to choose from, which one is going to give me kind of the best experience without me having to go and delve into the code of every individual project and investigate kind of the history of the thing, and like, is it active, and am I going to be able to get support for the thing? And so the kind of open source best practices shake out naturally as going like, what is a good project and what characteristics does it have that can we find that in other projects as well? So
yeah, thanks. I'm taking notes also if
yeah.
I'm too madly if I'm not talking to you. But yeah, what kind of characteristics do you measure?
So one of the kind of key things that open source has to exist on is licenses. There must be maybe kind of, and it's different for different communities, but it could be upwards of kind of 30% of projects that are available on RubyGems or NPM might not actually have any kind of license associated with them, which actually means you're legally not allowed to use that code. so that you actually break the copyright of the maintainer, the owner of that code, if they've not given you explicit permission to use that. And that then can potentially translate into, if that is a low-level library that you're not directly depending on, but you depend on transitively, you're still potentially breaking the copyright for that user because you're using it, but you don't even realize that you're using it. And so one of the first things you should do when you open source your code is to choose a license and to ensure that every dependency that you use also is correctly licensed, so that you don't pass that kind of the buck on to someone else who's then like, oh, I can't use your thing because I'm not allowed to use that. Another really good practice is to have kind of a number of documents or kind of guidelines for ways people can find out basic information about your project. So a README is kind of super standard for, especially for GitHub repositories. But some people may not add a README, but it's the kind of the go-to documentation, the like, what's the brief overview, and that could end up being all of the documentation in there as well if it's only a small project or it's fairly easy to explain. But having a README and having kind of the basic install steps, the setup, like how to get support, where to go to contact the people who are maintaining that thing, and then potentially going forwards and going, let's give information about how to report security issues. So is there a private mailing list for advising about, like, rather than just opening an issue on the bug tracker to say there's a security vulnerability here, here's how to exploit it, like where should I send this privately so that it can be dealt with in a responsible way. And then there are a number of the standards that have kind of shaken out over the past couple of years, I guess, of contributing .md for guidelines of how you can actually give back to that project, and that might be kind of like steps to here's where to open an issue to say, like, is this something that I can do, and that's a good way of ensuring you don't waste time. So you might start on a big pull request, open it up and find out actually, like, there was already a discussion about this on a mailing list over here that you didn't see, so you've ended up doing double work from if you just opened an issue and said, should I fix this bug or should I refactor this thing, then the maintainers will kind of be able to give you an indication of, yes, this would be a great thing to do, or also here's some tips, and all that kind of stuff should be listed in contributing MD, and that will potentially include like a contributor license agreement or a code of conduct, which often the code of conduct will be a separate file that will be really easy to spot in the base of the README. Is it the contributor covenant, I think, is a really widely used standard open source code of conduct that lots of people are using. I can't remember the domain name, but it's easy to find, and having that, it gives you kind of a good indication of, like, is this a welcoming project for me to contribute to? Before I even start to delve into the issue tracker, you get a good indication of whether these people are going to be friendly to my contributions and kind of welcoming. And there's another one. I've forgotten it. No, it's completely gone.
Contributor covenant. That's amazing. I didn't know there was a good one there. Can you actually talk a bit more about the contributor license agreement? I haven't heard too much about that.
So it tends to be used more by businesses rather than individuals, where if you are going to propose a patch to a project, you actually maintain the copyright of that patch, even though it's been accepted and merged into the project. So the code that you put in your pull request is actually copyright to you, and you don't automatically pass that copyright back onto the original maintainers of the project. So a contributor license agreement usually says something like, you accept that by sending us a patch and us merging it, that we can use this code, and you're kind of sharing the copyright with us, And it may also be that you waive any patent-related things to the contributions that you're making. You see this a lot on Facebook. Has big kind of, I think they have a bot that will essentially check to see if you've already signed their contributed license agreement when you open a pull request, and that will kind of go like, you can't, we can't merge this until you've agreed to sign this thing. And usually it's just a case of kind of typing your name in a website, or but some organizations might require you to send a form in, actually print it off and send it through the post, which is kind of painful, and it adds a lot of, like, a big barrier to entry to contributions. So there are certain licenses you can use on your projects that undo the need for a contributed license agreement, potentially. I mean, not a lawyer, so there's a lot of like fluffiness around that, but the Apache 2 license is often used as a way of going, there is an agreement in the license, and as you're building on top of this this license project, that if you contribute back, you also enable the maintainers to use your code for whatever purposes, and kind of share that that burden, so there's no potential legal grounds if you want to then, if that project is owned by a company and then the company is sold, that you have agreed essentially like it's okay for them also to sell your contribution. And it's really like, most individuals wouldn't need to worry about that kind of thing, unless once your project gets humongous, then you run into more difficult problems than just kind of like copyright attribution and things like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think the whole legal issue is the one I'm most, as much as I love open source, all the legal stuff is the stuff I'm most fuzzy about. So it's really cool to hear you explain that a bit more.
And a lot of the legal things haven't necessarily got any kind of precedent. So there can be things around like copyleft licenses, like the GPL, don't necessarily play well with other software licenses. And really, it's just a recommendation by the Free Software Society saying this license shouldn't be used with this license. But if it's never actually been to court and there's no precedent, then it's hard to actually be like 100% sure that that is the case. So it ends up being really fluffy either way, and you really kind of want to just follow the best practices, or if you are really concerned, to actually consult a lawyer, because they'll be able to go like, here's like proper legal advice on this thing.
Yeah, it's probably good advice to everyone. Talk to a lawyer. Also, sorry, I think I may have interrupted you earlier when you were going through the things that you check for best practices. You talked about licensing and documentation. Is there anything else that you check or score?
So some of the kind of things that I've been looking at in libraries are ways of working out if the project is dependable. So it may not be directly because something that the maintainer can kind of just flick a switch or add this document, but making sure that you're responsive on issues and pull requests. And that may not mean that you have to accept all of the patches or fix all of the bugs that people are reporting, but actually showing that you are still around is a really good way of encouraging people to think like, this is actually a project that I can rely on, even if it doesn't mean that like I can't possibly fix every bug that everyone reports. But if I just say like, yep, that's a bug, can you like give me some steps to reproduce it, or like let's put this in label it up in a way that says this is going to be fixed, or if you want to help out, then you can fix this thing. And I've started to use that in libraries as a way of finding the projects which technically work but haven't had, say, the average time to response is a year on an issue. That's a really good sign that even if it looks like everything is fine, if you have run into a bug, you're not going to get any support from the project. And then there's things like if you're publishing it on a package manager or you're releasing versions, then it's a really good practice to follow semantic versioning in your version numbers, because it gives a good way to describe if you've made breaking changes without actually having to for someone to pore through the source of the changes that you're making. And having a changelog also along with that is a really good way of, if someone wants to get the high-level changes of what's actually happened in this latest release. I don't want to look through the diff between these two things, because if I have no experience of that particular library, I'm basically going to have to relearn the whole thing to work out what's changed. So give like a nice high-level summary of here are the features that were added, here are the bugs that are fixed, and point those to the issue tracker, and also say who did those things. I actually give credit to the people who fixed the bugs or reported the bugs, and then also highlight any potential breaking changes or deprecations or things that people should avoid based on the changes that you've made. Is a really good way of kind of properly communicating with the users of the software, rather than just dropping in a change set on GitHub and kind of going like, there we go, I solved my own problem, that's fine, like I don't, if you want you can work out what's changed on it, and that can also then start to be, there's a format, I think the website is called keep a changelog, maybe .org, maybe .com, and there's actually now kind of like a recommended format for changelog files, which makes it so that people can pass the changelog programmatically and then start to do things like, there are services that can tell you about, I'm making changes to this, I've noticed changes in your dependencies, here is a nice summary of those changes, because I could easily pass that format of text, so it adds a little bit more structure as well, and that website also gives you good kind of like tips for actually how to write your changelog and things to include and things to not include.
Yeah, that's a really great resource. I'm learning so many things through the changelog, contributor covenant.
The other thing that's quite interesting at the moment that I'm looking into, but I haven't got around to adding it into libraries, and personally don't have much experience in it. I've not had any security issues in any code that I've published that I've known about or that someone has told me about. But if you do, if someone does report a security issue, it's a really good thing to actually go and publish that in a place like, I think it's called MITRE, essentially a database of security advisories. And then they will give you, once they've confirmed it's actually a security bug and which projects and versions it's related to, you can get a proper CVE that's and a number in a database of all security vulnerabilities. And what I'd like to start to do is then to connect that with open source projects. So rather than have these two separate databases, but getting people to actually kind of report their security advisories, rather than just like, oh, I've made a bug fix that fixes a security problem, like actually a good way of telling your users how severe was this security issue, who does it affect, and then we could potentially start to programmatically go like, you depend on something that has a security advisory. And for a few different languages, there are things like that. So I think there's database of Python advisories, of Ruby advisories. There's also the Node Security Project, which is publishing, they're doing the research into Node module security, and then they're actually publishing these advisories and linking them to NPM modules. So you can find out, do I depend on something that has a security risk, which then you can avoid. It's really surprising, especially as you get more dependencies in your application. Oh, turns out we've got like something which we depend on transitively that has an advisory that we need to like either just review, or we actually need to fix that, or we need to swap out that dependency, stop using it because they haven't fixed the security vulnerability. And if you're running that kind of stuff in production rather than using it as a tool locally on your machine, then you could potentially be kind of exposing your users to lots of issues. So actually telling people about security advisories is a really good practice, which then it'd be kind of neat in libraries to essentially kind of go, if someone lands from a page on Google on a particular project page, to go, just be aware, like this is currently has a security advisory on the latest release, so maybe don't use it, or can we find an alternative for you that is similar that doesn't have a known issue? or even hide those from the search results, so you couldn't kind of accidentally pick something up that would be bad.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I've never really thought too much about. I probably should think more about security.
And not all of those things can be easily picked up. Like, you may not realize if you combine different projects together that you could introduce security vulnerabilities yourself. There's a standard, what's it called? OWASP is the kind of like open web security list, and it has like the top 10 security vulnerabilities that are introduced in web applications, and it's a really good list to if you're maintaining or running web applications that other users actually hit, to avoid those standard things, which are like the most recurring security issues. And it's a really good set of things to avoid, whether you might realize, or there's some more subtle ones that are kind of like, oh, I didn't even realize I could be open to that kind of thing. And different frameworks will give you different, like Ruby on Rails tries hard to mitigate a lot of the basic ones. But if you're putting together, say, if you're just using the standard Node HTTP server, you don't get any of that for free, and you could potentially open your users up to like SQL or cross-site scripting attacks because you built it all yourself, but without any kind of realization of these are things that people are actively looking to exploit on your projects.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, and a little scary when you think about it.
Yeah, especially as I've been looking into all the, I think libraries supports about 32 different package managers now. As you look into kind of the underbelly of a lot of this stuff, it's kind of scary. You're like, it's best not to think about the potential for all of the problems that could shake out. But generally, everything is usually fine.
That's great. Thank you so much. We do have a couple. Oh, thanks everyone for adding links. It's very helpful. We have a couple of questions. They look like they're mostly license related, but I'll ask them anyway. Is the default license field in package JSON considered binding in an instant package? And does the package need to explicitly include a license set? That's more of a legal question, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Let me have a look. So I believe technically not. Without most, and it depends on the text of the license for sure. If you actually are just saying like 3 letters, MIT, that doesn't actually include the text of the license with your project, then you're not technically kind of delivering the terms of the license to the user if they download that project. And something to, if you actually put the file as, kind of name it as license or copying or one of the standard kind of forms, then GitHub will actually start to detect that you actually have a real license in your project. And they just rolled out fairly recently a BigQuery kind of dump of public data of GitHub repos, but they only include projects that have the license text in them. So they won't look in your package JSON to see if that says what license do you have. They only look for the actual license file. So it's definitely important to include that whole license file, or depends on the license. Some say you should put it at the top of every file, which then if you're delivering a JavaScript file that will be over a CDN, for example, that just having the license at the top of the file is acceptable as long as the text of the license is there.
Awesome. And another license question. I'm sure you're loving these. The CLA, contributor license agreement, I believe, is always necessary. Like, you agree to making PR that we use to code is not valid.
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I don't use CLAs on any of my projects, and it definitely, the only thing that I remember hearing about is if you use Apache 2, then you don't need the contributor license agreement, and that came from a Red Hat blog post that I can't remember where that would be, but they basically said, like, we switched to Apache 2 and stopped requiring a contributor license agreement based on their legal advice. For other licenses, and like if you just say in your contributing.md, you agree to let us use your code, I don't know what the legal precedent is for that, to be honest. I'm sure there is kind of a standard thing, but for most projects, and GitHub has kind of massively multiplied the amount of people that are contributing to projects, who knows if that is kind of like that's fine or not. And I think it is very specific to the license and what you plan to do with the code as well, because if they're contributing back under the same license but they retain their copyright, it would be fine for them to use because the license says you can do what you like with it, but it may not be that you actually have the ability to do anything with their copyright, so you can't transfer their copyright to someone else.
Cool. So that's what we have for the written questions. And I wanted to open it up to the floor. There's a lot of people making some cool open source stuff on this call now. So if anyone here has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I don't know if anyone's going to ask a voice question. Cool. Okay, and people are throwing in links of answering other questions.
Yeah, that OpenShift one is the blog post I was thinking of. Good find, whoever that was.
Good job, Dan. He's here on the call. Fast Google fingers. Yeah, you and Madeline have both been throwing in links this week. So thank you both. Yeah, this is actually a really interesting call. And actually, could you throw in some links to like libraries and how where we can see that rating or how you sort them, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. So I've got the breakdown is currently like a set of numbers, and I haven't documented it particularly well in the application, but there's a file that is kind of like, here's the code of, given this number, here's the weighting that I give to this thing. And the biggest kind of number, or the biggest weight, is the number of GitHub projects that depend on this thing, because that's a really good sign that this is a dependable project. If other people literally depend on it, then you can kind of be confident that it is being used and it has more people that would run into the same problems as you, and it's a much better sign of usage than, say, GitHub stars, because a GitHub star is closer to a Facebook like or a Hacker News upvote, where it correlates a lot to how many people have seen the project, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're using it, and no one ever unstars a project on GitHub. But you will actually remove a dependency that doesn't work for you if it's broken, or if you're not getting on well with it. You'll actually take it out, and libraries will see that it's been removed, and so the count will go down if everyone stops using that thing. So it works very similar to Google PageRank, where the more people that are linking to it, in the sense that they're linking to it as a dependency, the more trusted you can consider that to be. And then that can pass on to its dependency. So if a really highly depended on project depends on something else, you can assume that it's going to be fairly good because lots of people are transitively using that thing.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure throw in those links. Also, I just remembered, you mentioned you want to talk about a new project on here. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, sure. So I shipped it a couple weeks ago. It's built on top of the libraries API. So libraries has a JSON API that anyone can use to do research on kind of querying different bits of information about different libraries, or you can get a list of the dependencies of that thing, or the things that depend on that thing. So if you've got an open source project, you can actually go and see what other open source projects use my code. And I built on top of that a service called Dependency CI. What that does is it works similar to Travis CI or Circle CI, where every time you commit and push to GitHub, it will review your the dependencies of your application. So if you've added a new dependency, it will check a number of rules. So it'll basically go, has this thing been marked as deprecated or unmaintained by the maintainer of the project, which probably means you shouldn't be using it because it's no longer working or it's not going to be updated. or has it been removed from the package manager that it was published to, which, especially for things like Go or if you're using Bower, there's no real kind of firewall to stop people from just deleting their GitHub repo, and the code that you depend on is no longer there. And then it will also start to check license-related things. So it'll go like, has this project got a license? And rather than doing that kind of, large organizations will often do a yearly review of the licenses and the dependencies of their application, which then you're already a bit late, because now you've built code on top of that unlicensed dependency, and you're going to have to yank it out, or you're going to have to try and find the maintainer and potentially pay them for a license. And what Dependency CI tries to do is get that in front of that process. So before you merge code into master, review those dependencies very quickly and automatically and go, does this match, like, does it have a license, and is it in a good state? And then potentially in the future, is it okay security-wise? There's no current advisories on this project. And usually no one actually actively goes and reviews all the dependencies or in a pull request. There'll just be one line in your package JSON, oh, that's fine, we'll just merge that. But you could have potentially pulled in all kinds of bad things that you wouldn't usually do. So that all uses the libraries API and the open data behind it, and it is completely free for open source projects, and there's quite a few projects using it now. I think kind of like 2,000-3,000 open source projects that are testing their dependencies, and hopefully I've seen a few people that have then gone to an open source project without a license and say, can you add a license? Which ends up being a nice cycle of actually we're encouraging people to improve the dependencies, and that has an impact for everyone else who depends on that thing as well, which is really neat.
Can I ask a question? This is slightly unrelated. Okay, so this sounds like a really cool data set. So I was wondering if you publish like the raw network information that you're getting, or if you've done any kind of analysis on it, or other people have, or expressed interest in it.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated by the network graph in there. I've been teaching myself some Neo4j on the side to try and put it in a graph database so that you could start to do like, how many network hops do I need to make to get to between, kind of like, you could end up doing a 6 degrees of Bootstrap. Like, how far away is this library from Bootstrap? And currently I just have the JSON API. The data is humongous. I think the Postgres database has about 170 million rows in it, which comes out as about 13 gigabytes of compressed SQL if you dump it. And I don't have a good way of distributing that yet. But I'm trying to get to that point, and I've shared it with a company called SafeStack, who are sponsoring the hosting costs of libraries for a year. And they are going to be doing some security research and hopefully a talk later in the year about like looking at how a potential security advisory could infect the rest of the dependency tree and everything that depends on that particular project. So, which would work the same for like what happens if there's a license change somewhere in this network. How does that affect all of the knock-on projects that depend on those things? But it would also be really interesting to use for, I was talking to Arfan Smith of GitHub about the idea of if you can make a link between software that was used for a research paper, that you could potentially use citations across that dependency graph, and actually people could be cited in a paper that they didn't even realize they wrote some code that contributed towards the end result. And you end up with that kind of trickle-down effect of, like, I may only have a very small impact, but I did have some kind of impact in a scientific paper because I wrote some open source code that kind of supported that work. And DepC is a similar project that started to do that. I've been chatting with them about if the work that they've done is to get the initial hop from the papers to the software projects, and then libraries has that dependency graph to fill out the trickle-down effect for every different language. And I think there could be some really cool research to do there to to enable people to see the actual impact of the software that they could make. You imagine being able to go, what have I contributed to that I don't realize as a kind of a network effect? Or the other way around, like what should I contribute to that is in the network that is super important but doesn't have enough people, or is unmaintained, or has security advisories? Like what calls to action can we make that are kind of based on the projects that are currently the most important or the most vulnerable for a given community? That would be really neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you can get like those insights published somewhere, that'd be super cool. Looking forward to yeah, what comes out of that research. Cool. So yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. That was great. If anyone else has more questions, even those watching online, feel free to add them to line 117. And Andrew, if you could just keep an eye on that, if more questions come in, just answer them asynchronously. That'd be awesome. And yeah, add some links to some of your projects. I think I just have a link to libraries and not yet about dependencies. Cool, but yeah, thanks, Andrew. So we're going to move next to project updates. Here, people are saying things about Andrew's awesome stuff. I'm just going to mute everyone who's not speaking right now. Don't be offended. But we have some project updates. So up first we have, this is my project, Paper Badger. So if you've ever looked at academic papers, sometimes there's like 50 authors, you don't know who did what. So this one assigns badges to individual authors on a paper. So you know who wrote the paper, who collected the data, who wrote the software. So it's live on 2 different journals right now, but we're in the middle of migrating our badge system. So if you have any experience with BadgeKit or Badger, I would love your expertise and help, even just reviewing pull requests. But you can take a look at our issues or say hi to us in Gitter. And next, I think this is Nifras, who I don't believe is on the call right now. But he has a project called Feedback, which I believe was at the Moz Sprint. So it's on planning stages, and it will be available soon. So we'll keep an eye out on that. And Nifras, if you're in that pad, feel free to add more info. Yeah, I know it's a weird time zone for him, though, so we'll keep going. And now we have Oliver's project, WorldSpring. Oliver, can you tell us a little bit about your project and any updates you have?
Yeah, so I'm live. You hear everything good? Good. So yeah, I'm working on a project to basically do something against scientific misinformation. I consider a reason of why scientific misinformation can spread so widely is because it is very time-consuming for web users to find quality content. And the most efficient way to do so at the moment is to either use a search engine and manually filter out all the sources you trust, or to go on each of those sources separately. We're talking about news websites, blogs, scholarly databases, or governmental databases. So what we built is a search engine that allows you to limit the sources you want to search through to a list of sources the science community considers as trustworthy. Or you also can choose custom clusters of sources you want to search through. You basically can say, yeah, here's 1,000 chemistry blogs. I really, like, the science community thought it's cool, and I think they're cool as well, and add my own ones, and I just want to search through these. Yeah, and our software is especially useful for a group of people who have a lot of knowledge to actually correct scientific misinformation, and that is science communicators. So scientists who do active outreach, science writers like journalists and bloggers, and the whole skeptical community, so people who do a lot of debating on the web. The ultimate goal of this tool is basically to be an integral part of their web research. And by monitoring their research behavior, we want to develop a credible and independent score for scientific quality of news and blog articles, as well as uncovering connections between them. Means, for example, if a user is going on an article and reads the sentence, GMOs cause cancer with no sourcing, by tracking our users what they do, we see how they afterwards go on a search engine or use our search engine to type in GMO study cancer and find a study, and even go further and look for a rebuttal, any article mentioning the study, analyzing the study. And we can take both content points and display them to other users that later come to this article. And therefore, we want to map out connections on the web, basically, that are currently not possible with classic machine learning approaches. Yeah, any questions to that before I go to the updates?
That's great, Oliver. It sounds like you've pivoted quite a bit from just the commenting stuff now to a whole search engine.
Yeah. This one is actually far more suitable for our goal, because with all the data people produce, we can make so many associations and abstractions and proxies to quality much better than just commenting. Basically, what we eventually want to develop is a crowdsourced web research engine where we can collectively surface the best content.
That's awesome. Yeah, and how can people help?
So yeah, we're about to release our first prototype of the search engine. It's a very Google-style search engine, just with a list of about 5,000 blogs and news websites we index. And we're looking for a team lead. Right now it's part-time, but as soon as we have an investment, which is considered to be in the next 6 months, it's full-time. So yeah, and of course contributors. We're using a tech stack of React.js, Elasticsearch, Django, and Python, and Scrapey as a scraper, as a spider. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
How people can help.
Thank you so much, Oliver.
Thank you as well for hearing me.
Yeah.
And thank you, Andrew, for your nice talk.
Yeah.
Helped me also a lot. I had like a few. Okay. I have to think about stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot. There was a lot in that talk. Thank you, Andrew. Up next, we have Madeline on Phage Parser. You're just taking a drink.
Okay. I wasn't paying attention. I was to Oliver, not to me. Okay, so Phage Parser is a project that was started in my group, and the idea is that we want to annotate CRISPR loci in published genomes of bacteria. So the CRISPR system is a super interesting bacterial immune system that's only about 10 years old in terms of us knowing about it, and there's a lot of research being done on it, but the information is kind of scattered, shall we say. So there's what we want to do is kind of combine the general principles that people know about CRISPR into a database that people can, say, search if they're looking at a particular organism, or they can upload their own genome and then get it automatically annotated. And so far it's just living on GitHub, and the link is there. And the next big step for the project is, right now we have a lot of analysis scripts, so the actual science of the annotation is for the most part done. And then to make it usable, we want to put the data that we annotate into a database that can be served on our website. So that's kind of the next big thing. And that basically means that I have to just learn how to do that. So if anyone wants to chat about that, databases, websites, yeah. But there are also some bugs that are labeled good first bug, and the link is there on line 202. So those are mostly documentation, but there's some code ones as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madeline. And it sounds like you've gotten like the bulk of the science stuff done. It's just like putting it all together and making it like usable for everyone. So I feel like that's a good place for new contributors to come in. Cool. Up next on our list, we have Kirsty, STEM role models. Take it away.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. So I am really excited to be on the call. I've been traveling, and I've been off the call for the last couple of months, and you can sort of see that because we had this fabulous flurry of activity at the beginning of June at the sprint, the global sprint, and we did all this amazing work, and then I went on holiday, and then I've been working, and I've just this is a sort of textbook project that has sadly sort of lost momentum. But August, we're coming back. It's going to be great. And I've put in the links into the Etherpad so that you can find out about it. Just really briefly, the project is to build a database that allows people who are organizing events to search to ensure that they have the most exciting, diverse speakers at their event. So instead of just like ringing up the same typical old white males that you always see at various different academic conferences or tech conferences and events and things like that, they can go to the STEM Role Models website and they can search through women, people of color, people for whom English isn't their first language, LGBT people, people with a disability. We have a couple of other ones like with caring responsibilities, or if you've taken a non-traditional career path. So anyone can be in there, anyone can sort of recommend someone. We do have the beginnings of a database, but we still need a bit of sort of a little bit of formatting to really sort of be able to open it up to have people add themselves. So I've added a little thing for where others can help. I've said we really need help with front-end development. So it's actually probably, you might imagine it's more simple than you could possibly imagine. But if you know anything about like writing a little CSS style sheet to make all of our different websites look really nice, so that a couple of us can put a little bit of text in to kind of explain what a certain page does. Or, of course, if you would like to help write those pages to sort of explain the project, it would be unbelievably valuable. And yeah, it's mostly that's sort of the current sort of hurdle is just finding people. I'm a bit like Madeline. I don't know how to build a website. So if anyone feels like just jumping in and really doing effectively some super simple stuff, we would love that. The other thing that I have done, and I put these links in the Etherpad as well, is I have created 2 different mailing lists so that you can stay in touch about the project. So there's a development mailing list, which is if you might want to know, I'm going to send out emails every 2 weeks with just an update of our roadmap, so an update on kind of new issues or key issues or things that we want to do. And I'm going to send those out, and so you could be on that mailing list, and if there's one that you happen to see you might want to jump on, you could do it, but you don't need, doesn't mean you don't have to like keep joining the GitHub repository kind of and checking out every time. Or if you're just interested in the project and think it's a cool idea, but you're not super bothered about like contributing to actually building it, but you'd like to know once it was done, there's a general project updates mailing list as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. In August, hopefully we're going to have I will say this out loud and you can hold me to it, that I will have a database that you all can see and add yourselves to by next August, by this next month's project call. Done.
Wow.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen because it's sitting there. It's online. You can see it. It's just not. It's not linked to anything. So I mean, it doesn't look pretty. So it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
You got that Google form sort of.
Exactly. No, it's there.
Yeah.
It's there. It just you just need to do like
fine.
a little bit of work. It's fine. It's there.
No, it's been really exciting. It's been super exciting watching you progress, because you had nothing when you first started on these calls, and now it's like you have stuff, and you have people that are interested. Yeah, it's very exciting. Good job, Kirsty.
Yeah, thanks.
So up next is actually Brian, who is, I think, sitting in a loud coffee shop and just joining and watching the YouTube stream of this. So I'm going to go over this. He says Abby version 1 or 2 can do it, so both of me will do it. I'm here on 2 computers. So Brian, he's working on GitHubber. It's making it easy to talk to GitHub from R. So you can go and check out the GitHub page and the contributing guidelines. And I know during the Moz Sprint, he was working on getting GitHubber on CRAN because it's the R package management system. So you just had to follow a bunch of rules to make it like compliant with CRAN. And he's almost there. There's just a few more issues going there. Oh, and they have to write unit tests. So if you like writing unit tests, if you like putting things on CRAN, go check that out. Brian is super awesome, even though you can't see his face. But yes, making it easy to talk to GitHub from R. And the next one, I see Max has joined us on the call. Max, can you give us a little update?
Sure. Am I coming through here? All right, great. So I'm involved in Cytoscape.js. Many of you may be familiar with it. For those who aren't, it's a JavaScript graph library, both for analysis and visualization. So here's a few updates from us. We've got some great pull requests from the community. Those are listed here. I won't go into detail there, but you can click through if you're interested. Great job, guys. We really appreciate that. Got a bunch of bug fix releases that have come out, and one coming up next week. We also have a new tutorial by Joseph Stahl, our GSOC student. If you click through on that, he's done put a lot of work into creating some great demos and really in-depth text to help out people who are interested in getting started with Cytoscape.js. So if you're interested and want to give Cytoscape.js a try, definitely click through on some of his tutorials. We're also talking with some of our contributors about developing a extension for Jupyter to have official support in their notebooks. So that's actually something that we'd like to get feedback on from the community, your ideas in terms of what features you'd like to see, maybe even just use cases, places where you'd like to use Cytoscape.js, have those visualizations in your Jupyter notebooks. So being able to hear from you guys about that would be great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, Max. And yeah, Cytoscape.js is an awesome project. I used it before I even joined Mozilla for like visualizing cool, fun network graphs. So it's really fun to use and pretty. And I think that's our last update. Some blank stuff here. But under community updates, new volunteers, if you're watching this and you haven't contributed to any of our projects before, but you're interested, feel free to add your name here and someone will contact you and help you get involved. But community updates. MozFest call for proposals. It's closing on Monday. Oh, actually, Kirsty, can you talk to us about this? Since Kirsty is one of our lovely space wranglers for MozFest.
Yes, I can. I actually didn't put that down there, but I am super excited that it's there. So MozFest is a 3-day event. It's held in London, and it sort of brings together people from all across the Mozilla sort of family. And there are different spaces. There's an art space, there's a journalism space, there's exploring the web, there's a youth area, there's a learning space where you can kind of learn web development and other related aspects. Did I already say arts and culture? But excitingly for you guys, there is an open science space as well. And what we would love for you to do is, if you have built something, or if you have some lessons that you would like other people to learn that maybe you learned the hard way, but you would like to sort of make it easier for others to learn, then you can submit a proposal. And you can basically, it's a little difficult to give you sort of constraints, because really anything goes. You can put in to have what's called a fireside chat. So you can, if you think that there's something that's worth sort of facilitating a bit of a discussion about, you can put in to do that. You can demo some software that you might want to do. You can lead a sprint for a project that you've got, or you can do what we call a learning lab, which is a bit more of a sort of traditional workshop where maybe you would like give a little demo, have a couple of examples and bring people in. But the main thing is we want to have the most exciting, just sort of cool, open projects. I will put in the Etherpad the link to our other Etherpad, which will allow you to ask any questions about it. So I'm going to be monitoring that, and Alice, who's also a space wrangler, are going to be monitoring that pad. You can also tweet at us if you've got any questions. The deadline is the 1st of August, which is Monday. It would be really cool if you could put something in by the 1st of August. It sort of like throws off the whole open process if you are late with things, and we want to kind of really include you as best as possible. So if you're a little bit unsure about whether your proposal is right, or if it needs changing, or if it's not yet complete, just reach out to us over the next couple of days and we're super happy to help out.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. I actually just, I was looking at the proposals. I saw Max's proposal come in with Cytoscape.js. That might have been a while ago. But yeah, that was exciting. It was fun to see that. And I think even last year, Max ended up collaborating with another random project that was there, and you made a demo that you showed on the last day. I forget what happened, but it was cool. And then I remember Mitchell Baker, the chief lizard wrangler. at Mozilla, she was like sitting with Max and asking him all these questions about his project. I don't even know what happened, but it was like, whoa, science is getting so much attention right now. So you all should come because it's amazing. And yes, Andrew, please submit a session.
Yeah, we're currently like really pushing getting you to submit sessions because we want to make sure that they're in by the 1st of August. But also, if you don't necessarily want to submit a session, you should definitely come and join us. It's at the end of October. It's in London. I think it's the 27th to the 29th.
It's the 28th to the 30th. Very close.
It's the 28th to the 30th. That's what I meant.
I have a question left regarding the proposal. If I finish the proposal by 1st of August, but there is some changes in the concept, like we want to do a small hack, like the 3-hour session where we like show project and let people hack on an API and attach their own sources, but it's not entirely sure how we're going to facilitate it. So can I change the copy of the text, or up to which point is that possible?
So I would imagine that changing the text, the exact words that you've written will be reasonably flexible, sort of into September. I would imagine we'd be able to edit things sort of mid-September, something like that.
Okay,
the key thing that we'll be making the decisions on, though, will be sort of what experience participants will have when you're facilitating that. So the most important aspect to kind of try and think about is like why people would come, what you would do if you had 5 people, what would you do if you had 50 people? You wouldn't have 50 people, but like 25 people.
You might have
would you
50
be able
people.
would you be able to deal with that? Because that's what we'll kind of really be looking for in the when we're sort of reviewing the proposals is are you going to do something cool? Are you going to do something fun? Are you going to be able to kind of provide an exciting experience for the people there? Not necessarily the exact bullet point numbers of exactly what they're going to do, but just sort of making sure that you're going to be a good facilitator, a good leader for everyone that comes along. Does that make sense?
Totally, I understand.
Cool. And there's one last thing. Alex dropped a couple links on some really cool articles. I haven't read them yet, but you should check those out. And that is our last minute of our project call. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Andrew. That was amazing at the beginning, a guest speaker. I'll stop. I'll click on this. So thanks, everyone, and I'll see you all next month. Stop broadcast. Bye.